The old Victorian house stood on Harbinger Lane, an air of melancholy surrounded it. But Mark and Sarah, they saw potential, not sadness. They saw a home. The house was a steal. Too good to be true, whispered the wind through the willow tree in the yard. Mark and Sarah paid no mind. They were blinded by excitement. They were ready to start their life together. The moving truck rumbled down the lane. Boxes were unloaded. The house creaked a welcome. Mark and Sarah, happy but tired, slept soundly that first night. Unaware of the secrets the old house held, they were not alone. Days turned into weeks, and the old house began to reveal its secrets. Mark and Sarah settled in, their laughter echoing through the empty halls, filling the space with warmth and joy. They explored every nook and cranny, making memories in every corner. The house felt more like home with each passing day. They painted walls, hung pictures, and shared countless moments of happiness. Each room began to tell a story of their new life together. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Sarah stumbled upon a hidden door, concealed behind a dusty tapestry. Curiosity bubbled inside her. She called to Mark, her voice tinged with excitement and a hint of apprehension. Together, they pulled on the old rusted handle. The door creaked open, its hinges protesting after years of neglect. The sound echoed through the attic, sending shivers down their spines, revealing a small forgotten room. The air grew cold as if the room had been sealed off from the world for decades. Dust particles danced in the dim light, creating an eerie atmosphere. A musty smell like old memories hit them. It was a scent of time long past, of stories untold and secrets kept hidden. The room was crammed full of forgotten treasures. Old trunks, vintage furniture, and mysterious boxes filled the space, each item a relic of a bygone era. A rocking horse stood frozen mid-gallop, its paint chipped and faded. It seemed to hold a story of its own, a silent witness to the passage of time. A dollhouse, its windows dark and empty, sat on a small table. It was intricately detailed, yet eerily lifeless, as if waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The room was a time capsule, a glimpse into a forgotten past. Sarah ran her fingers over the dusty toys. A chill ran down her spine. Mark felt it too, a presence. The room was filled with the ghosts of laughter and sorrow. They spent hours in the attic room, lost in a world of forgotten dreams. Who were these children, and why were their things left behind? As dusk settled, they reluctantly left the attic. They locked the door, but they couldn't lock away the feeling. The house held a secret, and they were determined to uncover it. That night Sarah woke with a start, a sound, a child's soft cry. She listened intently. There it was again, a whimper carried on the wind. She woke Mark. They both listened. Silence. Sarah felt foolish. It must have been the wind, she said. Mark, his arm around her, wasn't so sure. He couldn't shake the feeling. Someone was watching them. The next day, Sarah found a small porcelain doll, lying on the floor of their bedroom. Its eyes seemed to follow her. A shiver ran down her spine. She could have sworn she put the doll away. Section 5. Shadows in the corner of the eye. The cries continued each night, faint, but there. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, echoing through the halls of the old house. It was as if the walls themselves were weeping, mourning some long-forgotten sorrow. Mark and Sarah began to see things, fleeting shadows, glimpses of small figures. At first they dismissed these as tricks of the light, figments of their tired minds, but the shadows persisted, growing bolder with each passing night, darting just beyond their vision. They would catch a movement out of the corner of their eye, only to turn and find nothing there. It was as if the shadows were playing a cruel game, taunting them from the edges of their perception. They tried to ignore it, tried to go about their lives as if nothing was amiss. But the feeling of being watched, of not being alone, was impossible to shake. Tried to convince themselves it was their imaginations. They told each other it was just the house settling, the wind playing tricks, but deep down, they knew. They could feel it in their bones. Something was wrong, but deep down, they knew something was wrong. The air in the house felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. It was as if the house itself was alive, watching them, waiting. The house was not at peace. It was as if it held a dark secret, a memory that refused to fade. The walls seemed to whisper, the floors creaked with unseen footsteps. One evening Mark saw her. He had been lying in bed staring at the ceiling when he felt a chill run down his spine. He turned his head and there she was, a little girl, dressed in white. Her dress was old-fashioned, tattered at the edges, as if she had stepped out of another time, standing at the foot of their bed. She was still, almost statuesque, her eyes fixed on Mark with an intensity that made his blood run cold, her eyes wide and sad. They seemed to hold a world of sorrow, a depth of pain that no child should ever know. It was as if she was pleading for help, for release from whatever torment held her captive. Then, just as quickly, she vanished. One moment she was there, the next she was gone, leaving only the faintest trace of her presence behind. He was left with a feeling of dread, a cold, creeping fear that settled in his bones and refused to leave. He knew then that they were not alone in the house, and a single chilling thought. They were not alone. The house was alive with shadows, with whispers, with the restless spirits of those who had come before. And they were watching, waiting, for the right moment to reveal themselves. Section 6. A Town's Dark Secret. Mark and Sarah decided to delve into the history of their house. They visited the local library, their fingers tracing over brittle pages of old newspapers. The librarian, a kindly old woman, watched them with knowing eyes. She told them stories, whispers from the past. She spoke of the family who once lived in their house, the Harringtons. They had several children. Then, one by one, the children disappeared, vanished without a trace. The parents, distraught and broken, eventually left the house, never to return. Section 7. The Missing Children of Harbinger Lane. Mark and Sarah were stunned. The librarian's words echoed in their ears. The missing children, the toys in the attic, the cries. It was all connected. They rushed back to the house, eager to uncover more of its secrets. As they entered the attic room, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind them. They were trapped. Fear gripped their hearts. They were not alone. They could feel it. The air was thick with unseen eyes. The room felt colder now, more oppressive. They were not welcome here. Section 8. The Diary. They found a small, leather-bound diary hidden beneath a floorboard. Its pages, yellowed with age, held the secrets of the house. The diary belonged to the Harringtons' eldest daughter, Emily. Her words, filled with childish innocence, painted a horrifying picture. She wrote of her siblings disappearing one by one. She wrote of seeing things, dark, shadowy figures. She wrote of being afraid. The last entry sent shivers down their spines. "They're coming for me now," she wrote. "I can hear them calling my name." The diary ended abruptly. Emily's fate, a chilling mystery. Section 9. No rest for the wicked. Mark and Sarah couldn't ignore the truth any longer. They were living in a haunted house. The spirits of the missing children were trapped, unable to find peace. They heard their laughter echoing in the halls, felt their tiny hands tugging at their clothes, saw their sad eyes staring back at them from the darkness. The haunting escalated. Objects moved on their own. Whispers followed them from room to room. The house was filled with a palpable sense of dread. Mark and Sarah felt their sanity slipping. Section 10. Facing their fears. They couldn't run away. They couldn't escape the past. They had to help the children, set their spirits free. Mark and Sarah contacted a paranormal investigator, a woman known for her empathy and understanding of the other side. Together, they held a seance. The house crackled with energy. The air grew heavy, filled with the sorrow of lost souls. The investigator spoke to the children, promised them peace, promised them release. Section 11. Forever Haunted. As the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of hope, the first light of dawn cast long shadows across the old house. The once menacing structure seemed almost serene in the gentle morning light. The darkness of the night was chased away, revealing the house's true age and the stories it held within its walls. A sense of calm settled over the house. The children were gone. Their laughter, their cries, their playful footsteps that once echoed through the halls were now just distant memories. The rooms, once filled with life and energy, now stood silent and still, as if holding their breath. Their presence, once so strong, now just a fading memory. The toys they once played with lay abandoned, covered in a fine layer of dust. The walls, which had witnessed countless moments of joy and sorrow, now stood as silent sentinels to the past. Mark and Sarah stayed in the house. They couldn't leave. Not now. The weight of their memories and the promise they had made anchored them to this place. They felt a deep connection to the house, as if it was a part of their very souls. They felt a responsibility to honor the memory of the lost children. Every corner of the house held a story, a fragment of a life that was cut short. Mark and Sarah believed it was their duty to keep those stories alive, to ensure that the children were never forgotten. They visited the local cemetery, a place where the past and present seemed to converge. The air was thick with the weight of history, and the gravestones stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time. Placing flowers on the unmarked graves of the Harrington children, they made a silent promise. A promise that these children who had been taken too soon would always be remembered. The flowers were a small gesture, but they carried with them a world of meaning. They would never be forgotten. Mark and Sarah stood in silence, their hearts heavy with grief but also filled with a sense of purpose. They knew that as long as they remembered, the children would live on in their hearts. The house on Harbinger Lane stood silent. Its once vibrant walls now seemed to mourn the loss of the children. The air around it was thick with memories, and the very ground seemed to with the echoes of the past. The laughter and cries of children replaced by the whisper of the wind, haunted but peaceful. The children finally home. The wind carried with it the stories of the past, weaving them into the fabric of the present. The house, though haunted, was at peace, knowing that the children were finally where they belonged.